Hello everybody, it is Nicole from iiKiui and welcome to another art review video. Today we are going to be reviewing the Arteza watercolor pencils. This is the 72 pack and expert level. And we are also going to be reviewing the Arteza watercolor paper, and this is also expert level and it comes with 14 sheets. So let's go ahead and get started. So the watercolor pencils retail for $35.99 on their website and $29.98 on Amazon, and the watercolor paper retails for $24.99 on their website and $25.99 on Amazon. So for the pencils, they come in this metal tin and it's organized as 3 layers of 24 pencils, and they're all different colors. At first glance, they all kind of look the same, but I swatched them all and they all are different. They come sharpened with a flat point, so I had to sharpen them with my own sharpener, but they all are pre-sharpened, and they all have different names so you can identify them if you wanted to. So for these pencils, I use them on the watercolor paper that I'm reviewing as well, and this paper is highly textured. When I applied the pencil, it looked like it was pretty rough, and I did a gradation and pressed down pretty hard in the corner that's supposed to be the darkest. My first thought was that it was going to look grainy when I applied water to it, but to my surprise, it was actually very smooth when I applied the water, and it blended really well. So going into the drawing, this is just something that I did beforehand, just so I can show you guys the product more than the drawing itself. But for the skin, I used 3 different colors, and the first one was the base color. Then I did kind of this coral color for the cheeks and any part that would be more red. And then I did this brown, I believe it was called burnt ochre, and that was for the shadows. So the first thing that I did was I just applied all of the color pencils onto the drawing, and you can see that I do this kind of roughly. I do spread it out with a light hand at first, but then as I go on, I darken it in the spots that need to be darkened, so such as the cheeks and the shoulders, and the places that I want to add the reddish coral color I add in afterwards. And to my surprise, this actually blended really well. And I go over these a couple times, blending them together as I would with normal color pencils. And I am not very experienced with color pencils, but I do know how to blend them and just use pencils in general. So for the roses and her shirt, I knew I wanted it to be red, so I blended in 2 colors, rose red and carmine red. And these two look pretty similar when applying it, but I think it's also because the watercolor paper is really textured, so it's hard to see the different shades. But I blended that out, and then I did the leaves as well. And so I did everything except for the hair, which I left last because I didn't actually know what color I wanted it to be. And I ended up going with this kind of strawberry blonde color. At first it was not what I thought it would be. It was just this blonde, like a light color, so I used the ivory, honey, and the coral color that I used for skin, and I mixed that together, but it felt too different, so to tie it all together, I used the rose red in the roots and the tips to tie it all together, since I used the rose red in the other parts of the drawing. So after I blend this all out in color pencil, I go over it in water, and I just use a water brush pen to lightly blend them. And surprisingly, and as you can see there's a lot of surprises in here, it blended extremely well. I didn't even see any residue of the color pencil left over. It just blended and looked like I did it with watercolor. And I think it actually blended better than I would have done it with watercolor because I had so much control with the color pencils to make it as dark or as light as I wanted. I was actually able to make it look exactly how I wanted it to. So such as the cheeks are the pinky coral color blended into the skin, it looks pretty much how I wanted it to be. And usually when I do this with watercolor, it either looks patchy or it looks really washed out. And I think these watercolor pencils really help to blend colors before you actually add the water, so you can make a seamless blend without adding water first. Now for the paper, I would say that this paper is really thick and is highly textured, and it didn't bleed through when I added a bunch of watercolor, but I will say the high texture made it really difficult to line it, which I guess is why it's mainly for watercolors and probably not for fine liners. I personally think that this paper pad is expensive because it is only 14 sheets in the paper pad and retails for about $25. It is more than $1 per sheet. This paper is labeled as an expert level, so maybe it's geared towards people that know what they want to do with it and are willing to spend more money on high quality paper. But for someone like me or any beginner or just someone trying to experiment, I don't think that you should be forking out so much money for paper that maybe you'll mess up on. For example, if you saw my fire elemental behind the scenes, you'll know that I actually did it twice because the first time I messed up, and luckily that was not on super expensive paper. It was just on a cheaper brand of watercolor paper. But things like that can happen, and I think for this specific paper, you would probably want to plan ahead a lot more if you're willing to spend more money on the paper. But being a cheapo that I am, I do not like to spend a lot of money on paper. I usually get it on sale at Michael's. So overall, my thoughts are that the watercolor pencils are very high quality, very pigmented, and they might actually be one of my new favorite things to work with when I do watercolors, so you might see more of that in the future. As for the paper, I think that it's high quality, it's highly textured, and it's really good for watercolors, but for me personally, I probably wouldn't pay that much for paper. Of course, this is just my personal opinion, and you guys can decide for yourselves. So if you guys are interested in purchasing these items, there will be a link down below in the description as always. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Keep drawing, keep painting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!